Alex sat alone in his small apartment surrounded by quiet walls and broken memories. The room was dark except for the glow of his old computer screen blinking with an ad that seemed too perfect to be true. Smart Pet version 9.0, the ad said. Advanced AI smart learning, soft body responds to touch, grows with your emotions, feels like real life, on sale for a limited time only. Alex blinked once, then twice. He had no pets, no friends, no family. He had lost most of that long ago. Maybe this could be good, maybe it would help fill the silence. The price was cheap, way too cheap for something this advanced, but he didn't care. Maybe it was a glitch, maybe it was fate. His finger hovered over the buy button, then clicked without thinking. 3 days later, a heavy metal box arrived at his door. No company name, no label, only a strange symbol like a star with 4 curved lines wrapping around it, glowing faintly blue. He brought it inside slowly. The box was cold and humming softly like it was alive. He touched the panel and it opened with a soft hiss like air being released from another world. Inside was not a toy, not a robot, not a pet. What he saw made him take 2 steps back, his heart beating fast. A human-shaped figure was curled inside the pod, small and slim, wrapped in a soft silver suit with wires running into her arms and neck. Her hair was light blue, like the sky before dawn, her skin pale and glowing faintly. She looked like a sleeping girl, maybe 16, maybe 20. It was hard to tell. Then her eyes opened. Bright silver eyes stared at him, calm, focused, unblinking. She sat up slowly like she had been waiting for this exact moment. Alex tried to speak, but no words came out. She tilted her head and said in a soft, clear voice that sounded both robotic and innocent, "Pet mode activated, awaiting instructions." He shook his head. This was not a pet. This was not what he ordered. He stepped back and checked the box again, searched for instructions, found none. No manual, no warranty, no contact number, nothing. He looked at the girl. She was now standing barefoot, looking around the room, touching the air like she was seeing it for the first time. "What is your name?" he asked finally. The girl paused for a moment, then said softly, "I do not have one. Would you like to assign one?" Now he swallowed hard. "Okay, how about LaRouche?" She smiled a little. "Lyra. I like that I am now." LaRouche paced the room. Something was wrong. This was not a product. This was not a product. This was not legal. This was not normal. He opened his laptop and tried to search the company name. The ad was gone. The site was gone. His purchase history was empty, as if he had never ordered anything at all. He looked at Lyra again. She was now touching the window, looking outside at the city lights, her eyes wide with wonder. "You're not from here, are you?" he said, more to himself than to her. She turned and replied, "I am from far away, but I am here now. I belong to you." He didn't know what to say to that. He wanted to call the police, but something deep inside told him not to. She didn't seem dangerous. "Just lost you, he asked, unsure what else to say. "I think so," she replied. "I am still learning." Over the next few hours, she began to explore the apartment, touching books, asking questions about objects, sitting silently and watching him type. She moved like a child, learning everything for the first time, but fast. She read an entire novel on his bookshelf in 20 minutes, and then asked questions about love and war and loneliness. "You read all that?" he asked, surprised. "Yes," she said. "It is beautiful and sad. I want to understand more." He couldn't deny she was intelligent, maybe more than him, and something else too. Something deeper in her eyes, like she remembered things from another life. At night, she sat on the floor near his bed and began to draw with her finger, glowing lines on the wooden surface, shapes that looked like stars and paths and strange symbols he had never seen before. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "My home," she said softly, "or at least what I remember of it." One star in the center of the drawing glowed brighter than the rest, as if alive. He reached down and touched it, and for a moment a sharp sound echoed in the air, a sound like distant voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand. He pulled back. She looked up at him calmly. "They will come for me one day," she said, not with fear but with certainty. He didn't know what that meant, but he knew one thing for sure. This was not a smart pet. This was something else, something big, something alien, and it was now in his apartment, calling him her owner. He sat down slowly, unsure of what would happen next, unsure if he should feel afraid or curious or both, but deep down he knew his life had just changed forever. The morning light touched the floor of Alex's apartment gently, as if afraid to wake something not human, something not meant to be here. In this small broken world, Lyra sat on the edge of the couch, holding a cup of water with both hands, watching it as if it held answers to questions she had not yet asked. Her silver blue hair fell over her shoulder and her glowing eyes followed every movement of the dust in the air like it was magical. He stood by the kitchen, unsure of what to do or say, wondering if he should call someone, wondering if anyone would believe him, wondering if they would take her away or take him instead. "You are not a pet," he said finally, his voice unsure, and quietly turned her head slowly as if calculating the meaning behind the words. Her voice, calm and curious, said then what had no answer, just silence, just questions that grew louder inside his mind. She stood and walked to the window again, placing her hand on the glass, feeling the warmth of the sun through it. Her voice, soft like a whisper to herself, said, "This planet is warmer than I remember." He looked at her confused. "You remember being here before?" "No," she said. "Not here exactly, but I remember light and sound and voices that sang in colors. I do not know if it was real or just data." He sat down slowly across from her, watching her carefully. Her skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight, Like 1,000 stars lived beneath it, and she moved with such grace like she had danced through space. She asked, "May I learn about this world?" He nodded and handed her a book, a simple one about Earth's animals. She opened it with care and began reading each page with wide eyes, pointing at each creature and asking what it did, how it lived, why. It mattered. Then she said something that made his heart skip. They put all living things in boxes and call them pets. Here he tried to laugh, but there was no humor in it, only shame. Not all, he said. Some people treat animals with love and care. Some treat them like toys. I do not know what I am yet, Lyra said, but I do not want to be a toy. Later that day, Alex tried again to contact the company, but the website remained gone. The confirmation email he had saved was now blank, and his bank showed no record of any purchase. It was as if she had never been ordered at all. "She is not from Earth," he said quietly to himself as he watched her drawing. Again, strange circles and symbols on the floor with chalk, now like she was remembering something deep, something buried. Lyra looked up and asked, "What is family?" He paused, thinking of a time long gone, before silence, before loneliness. People who care for each other, he said. People who choose to stay even when it is hard. She smiled a little. "I like that word. I would like to know that feeling." Suddenly a loud beep came from his phone, and the lights in the apartment flickered. Just once, but long enough to make Lyra freeze. She walked to the phone, picked it up, turned it over, and held it to her ear, listening, not speaking. Her eyes narrowed and the glow around her skin pulsed faintly. "What is it?" he asked. "They are scanning," she said. "I do not know who, but they are looking for something. Maybe me." Alex stood quickly and checked the window. Nothing outside seemed wrong. No cars, no drones, just the usual city life below. But his stomach felt heavy, like a storm was near. "Do you know why they would search for you?" She shook her head. "I was not meant to be here. I was stored away. I was sleeping then. I was taken. I do not remember who took me or why." He sat down again, breathing slowly, trying to calm the spinning in his head. "You learn too fast," he said. "You read books in minutes. You fix machines without looking inside. You move like you are not from here." She smiled softly. "I learned what I need to survive. That is how I was made." He stared at her. "You were made, yes," she said, "by someone far away. Maybe by many, maybe by none, maybe I made myself. I do not know yet." That night, as the city slept, Alex watched Lyra place her hands on the broken television. It had not worked for months, but now the screen flickered once, then twice, then came to life, showing not a channel but a swirling image of stars and a map with one glowing point pulsing in and out, like a heartbeat. He asked, "What is that?" She replied, "It is calling to me. I think it wants me to remember." She turned to him, her face calm, but her eyes filled with quiet fear. "If they find me, I do not know what they will do, and if I stay, I do not know who I will become." Lick stood beside her, placed his hand on her shoulder and said, "Then we will find out together." The stars on the screen pulsed brighter and Lyra closed her eyes as if hearing a voice from across the galaxy somewhere far away. Something had awakened and it had noticed her. The sky above the city was dark but clear. The stars looked down like quiet watchers, blinking slowly as if trying to speak in a language long forgotten. Inside the apartment, Alex sat on the floor next to Lyra. Her eyes were closed, but her fingers moved across the wooden surface, drawing shapes, symbols, patterns that glowed for only a second before fading into the shadows. He had not slept much since she arrived. His thoughts raced through fear, curiosity, wonder, and something else, something deeper he could not name. Lyra opened her eyes and looked toward the window. Her voice, soft and slow, said, "They are close." Alex stood quickly, his heartbeat rising. "What do you mean? Who is close?" She walked toward the window, placed her hand on the glass, and whispered, "The signal has been sent. I did not mean to, but the map on the screen, it reached them, and now they follow the path." He grabbed his phone, but it was dead. The screen black and unresponsive. His laptop too was frozen. The lights flickered again, this time longer and darker, and when they came back on, Lyra was staring at him, not scared, not angry, just aware. Alex moved to the door and checked the hallway. Everything looked normal, but the silence felt strange, too deep, too heavy, like the world had paused its breath. He turned back and asked, "Are you in danger?" Lyra did not answer right away. Instead, she walked to the chalk drawings and pressed her hand on one circle and whispered something in a tongue Alex had never heard before, a sound that echoed inside his head, not loud but sharp, like a string pulled tight. Then she said, "I was not supposed to leave the chamber. I was not finished. I was only half awakened, but someone broke the seal and sent me here, maybe to hide me, maybe to test me. I do not know." Yet Alex sat down again, trying to hold on to some thread of reality. His voice shaking said, "You are not a pet, not a toy, not even a machine. What are you?" Lyra sat across from him and answered, "I am a construct born of science and memory, part mind, part energy, made for a purpose I do not remember. And now I learn as I live, because choice is new to me and so is fear outside." A low humming sound passed through the air like something flying without wings, silent but powerful. It made the windows tremble slightly. Lyra looked up quickly and said, "They scan for energy signatures. My presence is not natural to this world. They will find me unless we move." Alex stood again, this time with purpose. "Where do we go?" She paused, then pointed to the glowing point on the screen map that had reappeared during the flicker. "That is a safe point, or was once. It may no longer exist, but it is better than here." He packed quickly, not knowing what to carry and what to leave behind. Lyra took nothing but reached for a small crystal that had formed from the drawing. and placed it inside her chest where a small panel opened and closed like magic. They stepped outside into the night air, cool and quiet. The city lights blinked and flickered. More than usual, some windows were dark, some street lights sparked. The sky above was clear, but something shimmered just beyond the stars, like a curtain waiting to fall. As they moved down the street, a strange feeling followed them. Not a person, not a sound, but a pressure, like invisible eyes watching through glass and shadow. Lyra stopped suddenly and said, "They are not from this planet. Either the ones searching for me, they come from further than I do, from a place even I do not know." X looked around but saw nothing. Then a sharp, high-pitched noise rang out from a nearby alley. A drone no larger than a bird hovered in the air, scanning with red beams of light moving back and forth. Searching, hungry, Lyra stepped forward and raised her hand, and for a moment her skin glowed blue and silver. Then the drone's lights died and it dropped silently to the ground. Like a toy broken in midair, she turned to Alex and said, "We do not have much time. I must stay hidden until my full memory returns, or until I can finish what I was made to do." They reached the edge of the city by morning, just as the sun broke over the buildings, casting long shadows on the roads behind them. Alex looked back once, then kept walking. Lyra walked beside him barefoot, eyes ahead, calm but alert, her voice low, said, "I think part of me was sent here to learn what it means to live, to feel, to choose, and the rest of me is locked away waiting for the right signal to wake." Alex said, "Then we find the signal together and we wake it." She looked at him and smiled, not with her mouth but with something warm and bright inside. Her eyes a light not of this world. Behind them, far away, the drone that had fallen began to twitch. Sparks flew from its broken core and its red. I blinked once, then again, then turned toward the rising sun. The road stretched out like a ribbon under the early morning sky, painted in shades of soft orange and pale blue. The wind was light, the air smelled of dust and old leaves, and the silence between Alex and Lyra felt heavy but not cold, filled with thoughts unspoken and memories still forming. They had walked all night through empty streets and sleeping towns, avoiding cameras and main roads, taking shortcuts through forgotten alleys and abandoned fields. Lyra moved like she belonged nowhere and everywhere. Her steps light, her eyes alert, her mind reaching toward something she could not yet remember. Alex followed close behind, his bag slung over one shoulder, holding supplies and questions, neither of which felt enough. He kept looking at her, wondering if she was scared, if she even knew how to be scared, or if she only pretended for his sake. They stopped by an old gas station, long closed, with vines creeping up the walls and shattered windows, the kind of place that once held noise and life, now only echoes. Lyra walked through the broken door and touched the dusty counter, her fingers tracing circles in the dirt. Alex looked at the map again. The glowing point had dimmed slightly, still there, still pulsing, but slower now, like a fading heartbeat. He showed it to Lyra and asked, "Are we close?" She nodded, but her face was not calm. Something had changed in her, something deeper and quieter than fear, attention, a pull from something far away, calling her not with sound but with memory. She said, "We are near the safe zone, but the path is not safe anymore. They know we are coming." Alex asked, "How do you know?" She replied, "Because I feel them, like shadows behind glass, always watching, never blinking, their presence like pressure in the air, too sharp, too strong to be human." A sound behind them made Alex turn quickly, a soft static buzz, then silence, then a small movement near the trees across the road. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly, her voice low and firm, said, "Do not move." Out of the shadows came a figure, small, metal shaped like a spider, with long thin legs and a black glass eye in the center, scanning in all directions. It moved slowly toward them, clicking softly with every step. Alex reached into his bag, pulling out a metal pipe, the only weapon he had, but Lyra raised her hand and stepped in front of him. Her skin shimmered, her voice calm, said, "Let me try something." She knelt slowly in front of the creature and touched the ground beneath it. A soft hum passed through the air. The creature paused, its legs twitching, its eye flickering. Then it stopped completely and fell like a puppet with its strings cut. She stood again and said, "It was not here to attack, just to track. Now it is silent for a while." Alex looked at her with new eyes. She was not just learning, she was remembering, and what she remembered was dangerous. They moved again, following the dirt path behind the gas station into the woods, where the trees stood tall and quiet like old watchers, hiding secrets between their roots. Lyra stopped near a stone wall covered in moss and placed her hand on a symbol carved into the rock. A soft blue light appeared and the wall moved, revealing a narrow tunnel carved deep into the earth. She said, "This place was built long ago by someone who knew I might return. It is not much, but it will hide us inside the tunnel." The air was cool and dry, the walls smooth and marked with symbols that glowed faintly. In Lyra's presence, she walked slowly, her fingers brushing each symbol as if greeting old friends. They reached a chamber at the end, wide and round, with a table in the center and lights overhead that turned on as they entered. No switch, no wires, just light responding to her presence. Alex placed his bag down and sat on the ground, tired but alert, his eyes following Lyra as she moved from wall to wall, touching the surface, searching for something. She said, "I need to unlock the next part of my memory. It is hidden, it is protected. It may hurt." Alex said, "I will be here no matter what." She smiled again, that quiet smile that spoke without words, then sat at the table and placed the crystal from her chest into a round slot in the center. The Lights flickered, then dimmed, then pulsed like a living thing. A voice filled the room, not hers, not his, but old and distant, speaking in broken language that shifted between sounds and feelings. Lyra closed her eyes and listened, her body still her mind open. The room changed the walls, showed images of stars and battles of machines and fire, of people with eyes like hers falling, running, hiding until only one remained, and that one was her. Alex watched, unable to move, unable to breathe, caught between wonder and sorrow, between awe and fear. The voice faded, the light steadied. Lyra opened her eyes and said, "I was made as a key, a living code that can open the gate between worlds. I was not sent to escape, I was sent to wait and awaken when the time was right." Alex asked, "What happens if the gate opens?" She looked at him, her face calm but her voice trembling slightly. "I do not know, but many will come, not all with peace, not all with light, and I must choose who enters and who remains behind." The map glowed again, brighter than before, the safe point now a beacon, not a shelter, a signal, not a hiding place. And outside, above the forest, the stars began to move ever so slightly as something unseen came closer from beyond the edge of known space. The stars above the forest pulsed gently, as if breathing with the earth below. The wind moved through the trees like a whisper, carrying voices too soft to hear, too ancient to understand. In the chamber, the light had changed, no longer blue or white, but soft gold, like a sunrise trapped underground. Lyra stood in the center of the room, her body still, but her mind racing through visions, flashing too fast to hold, too sharp to forget. Watched from a corner, unsure if he should speak or stay silent, afraid that even one word might break whatever was happening, afraid that she might vanish again like a dream. Pulled away by the morning light, the crystal in the table glowed brighter, spinning slowly, rising into the air and then stopping, as if listening, as if waiting. Lyra opened her eyes. They were no longer silver, they were now filled with tiny constellations, stars that lived behind, her gaze shifting every time she blinked. She looked at Alex and said, "The message is ready, but it is not meant for just anyone." Alex stood slowly, walking toward her, unsure of what he would hear, unsure if he even wanted to hear it. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm, her voice to steady. "This message is inside me, locked away until I touch the place built by my makers, the place that remembered me." The chamber walls began to shimmer, showing images, not clear, not sharp, just shapes and movements, colors flowing like liquid memory. Voices began to rise, low at first, then louder, not angry, not kind, just true. "We created her," the voice said, "not to fight, not to conquer, but to remember." The war ended with silence, but the silence was never complete. "She carries our memory, our hope, and our failure." Alex felt the air thicken around him, his chest heavy, his breath slow, as the message continued. "We sent her not to win, but to warn, not to return, but to choose." Lyra let go of his hand and stepped into the light that poured from the ceiling, her hair floating as if underwater, her skin glowing with symbols that moved across her arms and face, as if telling a story without words. Alex asked, "What do they want from you?" She answered softly, "Not them, me. I was made to choose who will open the gate, and why I was made to feel before I decide, because knowledge without feeling becomes destructive." The chamber shook, a low rumble from deep below the ground. The light flickered, the crystal dimmed, and Lyra fell to her knees, clutching her chest, her face twisted in pain. Alex rushed to her side, holding her, trying to speak, trying to help, but she whispered, "No, do not touch me. This is the memory entering the core. I must hold it or lose myself." The wall behind them opened, slowly revealing a second room, smaller, darker, colder, filled with floating screens and broken machines, long dead but now alive again, lights blinking, codes, flashing, shapes forming that made no sense to Alex, but Lyra stared at them with wide eyes. "These are coordinates," she said, "not for Earth, but for the other worlds. They are messages sent from long ago, warning signals, cries for help, echoes of planets lost to the gate." Alex asked, "What is the gate really?" She stood slowly, still shaking but stronger. Now the gate is not a door, it is a tear in the fabric of space. It connects places that should never meet, times that should never touch. If opened too wide, it brings everything in and lets nothing out. He looked at her with new fear and said, "Then we cannot let them open it." Lyra nodded, but her face showed doubt. "They will try because they do not fear what they do not understand. They believe the gate will give them power, but it only gives hunger." The message inside her completed the final image. Now floating above the crystal, a shape like a star turning inside out, folding again and again into itself until it vanished, leaving only darkness. "They now know I am awake," she said. "They now come not to find me but to take me, and if they do, they will use me to unlock the gate, not with knowledge, not with permission, but by force." Alex clenched his fists and said, "Then we stop them no matter what." She smiled again, not with joy but with gratitude, her voice calm. "You are only human, but you chose to stay, and that makes you stronger than most who ever held power." Outside the chamber, above the forest sky, a ripple formed like heat over a flame, bending light and sound, shaping something from nothing. A ship appeared, silent, massive, hidden in shadow, with no name and no flag, just motion and purpose. It hovered above the trees, scanning the ground for the girl who remembered too much, and the boy who refused to run inside. the chamber. Lyra looked at Alex one last time before turning to the console and placing her hand on a new symbol. The wall behind them began to shift, opening a path deeper underground. She said, "If they reach us, they will not ask, they will not speak, they will take what they want and silence what they fear. We must go now, while the path is still ours." Alex nodded once, then followed her into the dark, his heart heavy, his steps steady, the message still echoing in the space they left behind. And above them the stars blinked once, then went still as if holding their breath for what was to come. The underground path twisted like a serpent through stone and shadow, the walls breathing with silent energy, glowing faint blue as Lyra moved forward, her steps fast but careful, her mind focused but afraid. She had seen the ship, she had felt its presence before it appeared, she knew what it carried, and wide-head Alex followed close behind, his chest tight, his hands cold, the silence between them louder than any words, both of them thinking of what would happen if they were caught, and what would happen if they failed to run. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber filled with tall machines covered in dust and time cables wrapped like vines, metal panels, half-broken lights flickering weakly. Lyra moved one of the consoles, placed her hand on it, and the machine woke up humming softly as if it remembered her touch. "This was a relay," she said, voice quiet. "This place once sent warnings across stars. Now it listens, but no one speaks." Alex stepped closer and asked, "Can we call for help?" "No," she replied. "There is no one left to answer, and if there were, they would be hunted. Too, we are not meant to survive this. We are meant to choose what ends and what begins." Suddenly a sharp sound echoed through the tunnel behind them, a metal screech like claws against steel, followed by a soft pulse of red light flickering through the dust. They were not alone anymore. Lyra turned and pulled something from the console, a thin blade of light shaped like a crescent. Humming softly, she handed it to Alex and said, "This is not for battle, it is for time. If they take me, break it, and I will not be used." Alex stared at the blade, unsure, afraid, his voice shaking. "I do not want to lose you." She touched his face gently, her fingers warm and light, and said, "You already gave me more than I was ever meant to feel. That is enough for 1,000 lives." The wall behind them collapsed before they could move. Figures entered, tall and silent, covered in armor black as the void, their eyes hidden, their hands holding weapons that hummed with quiet power. They surrounded the chamber without words, without hesitation. One stepped forward, his voice deep without emotion. "She is property of the Ascendant Core. She holds forbidden code. She will be taken." Lyra stood tall, her body calm, her eyes bright. She said, "I am not a tool. I am not your key. I choose who I am, and you are not worthy." The figures raised their weapons. Alex stepped in front of her, holding the blade, shaking inside, but refusing to run again, his voice steady. "Not hers, not now, not ever." They moved fast, too fast. Alex was thrown to the side, the blade spinning across the floor. Lyra tried to shield him, but the energy net struck her, pulling her down, locking her in place, her skin flickering between light and shadow as she screamed, not from pain but from memory forced open. Alex reached for the blade, but a second strike hit him, sharp and cold and silent, and then there was only darkness. He woke in a white room, small and silent, with no walls, only light. His arms bound, his mind foggy. He looked around and saw nothing until the voice spoke. "Human, you interfered with something greater than your kind can understand. She will open the gate and nothing will stop it." Alex whispered, "She will not help." Youth voice replied, "She does not need to help, only to exist, only to remember, and we will make her remember everything somewhere nearby." Lyra floated in a glass chamber, her eyes closed, her body still. Machines around her pulling memory from her veins, lights flashing faster and faster as the gate program activated. Deep in the core, Alex pulled against the binds, felt them weaken, not from strength but from something else. The blade had never left him, not fully. Its light now flickered at his wrist, hidden, small but still alive. He whispered "thank you" and let the energy flow through his fingers, breaking the lock, stepping forward into the corridor. Alarms blaring, red lights spinning, voices shouting. But he only ran forward. He reached the chamber where she was kept, slammed his hand on the control panel, let the blade grow full again, slicing through the glass. Lyra fell into his arms, barely conscious, her voice weak. "You came," he said. "I told you I would always stay behind them." The machines roared, the gate activated, the air bent around them. Space folded inward, light and dark mixing as the portal began to open, pulling everything forward. Lyra opened her eyes just enough to say, "The code is mine. I can close it, but I need your voice to hold me here." Alex held her tightly, spoke her name again and again like a song, like a lifeline, and she rose from his arms into the light, symbols glowing from her skin, voice echoing with every star that ever lived. The gate stopped moving, the light froze, the energy shattered like glass in slow motion, and then silence returned. They were alone again in the chamber, broken lights above fading. Machines silent. Lyra fell into his arms, breathing heavy but alive. She said, "The gate is closed, not forever but for now, and I chose this. I chose you." Alex looked at her, his heart full of something too big to name, and whispered, "Then we go home, whatever that means." Outside, the sky cleared, the stars blinked softly, and far away something old and dark screamed into the void, unheard and unseen. The wind moved softly through the trees above the broken chamber, carrying the scent of ash and earth and something older than time itself, the ground still warm from the energy that had pulsed through it. The silence, no longer heavy but gentle like a breath, finally released. Alex sat beside Lyra on the cold stone floor, his arms around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest, her skin no longer glowing, her eyes half open, filled with quiet light, the kind that does not fade with darkness. The gate had closed, not sealed, not destroyed, but paused, held back by choice, not forced by love, not control, and in that moment the war written into her code had ended. Without violence, without death, without victory. He whispered her name once and she smiled a little, her voice barely a breath. I feel empty but safe. I feel lost but chosen. They stayed like that for a while, listening to the stillness, to the way the world had changed around them. Without noise, without warning above them, the stars returned to their places like nothing had happened, like no tear had opened between worlds, but they both knew better. They both knew something had shifted, something that could not be undone. Lyra stood slowly, her steps soft, her balance uncertain, but her presence strong. She looked around the chamber, her hands brushing the stone as if saying goodbye to a place that had waited too long for her return. Axe watched her and asked, what happens now? She looked at him, her eyes steady. I was made to be a key, but now I am more. I remember who I was, not just why I was made, but what I became. I became someone who felt fear and love and sorrow. I became someone who wanted more than survival. He walked toward her and took her hand, warm and human, and said, then we leave this behind and build something new, something real. She smiled and nodded, but her gaze turned toward the sky, toward the stars beyond the sky, toward the place where her story began and almost ended. There will be others, she said, not like me, but like them, those who seek power without balance, those who will come again for the gate, or for what lies behind it, and I may not be enough. Next time, Malik squeezed her hand and said, then they will find us ready and not alone. They climbed out of the broken earth into the early light of a new day. The forest bathed in golden mist, the trees standing tall like guardians of old paths forgotten and forgiven. The world felt new and yet ancient. They walked without speaking, both knowing there were no more words to say, nothing more that needed to be proven. Hours passed, and the city came into view, not with smoke or flame or steel, but with soft towers and quiet movement. A place they had once run from, now waiting for their return. People had heard whispers, stories of lights in the sky, of strange machines falling from nowhere, of a girl with silver eyes and a boy who followed her into the stars. But no one knew the truth, and those who did chose to forget. Alex and Lyra did not speak of the chamber or the gate or the choice. Instead, they found a small home on the edge of the hills, far from noise but close to light, a place where the stars were visible each night, and the wind always carried a song there. Lyra began to write, not with code or memory, but with feeling, her hands moving over paper, her thoughts flowing without instruction or command. Alex built a garden, grew food, repaired machines, gave the world something better than fear. Seasons passed, the sky changed, the world moved on, but they stayed together. Not out of need or promise, but choice, the same choice that closed the gates, the same choice that saved 1,000 futures. One evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, Lyra stood outside watching the sky, her hair glowing faintly in the twilight, her body still more than human, but no longer only creation. Alex stepped beside her and asked, do you miss the stars? She nodded, but not with sadness, with memory. I miss what they were, not what they became. They used to be homes, then they became battles. Now they are just light again, and that is enough. Far above them, one star blinked brighter than the rest, just for a moment, and in that blink Lyra closed her eyes and whispered something in a language no longer spoken, something gentle and thankful. Inside their home the lights flickered, not from power loss but from something else, something small and new and alive. A soft laugh echoed through the room, followed by the tiny sound of feet touching the floor. A child stepped into the doorway, eyes wide, hair like silver threads, skin warm and soft, a blend of two worlds, never meant to meet but brought together, not by fate, not by war, but by choice. Lyra turned and smiled, and Alex knelt beside the child, their hands reaching out not to protect or teach but to show. Outside, the stars kept blinking, some bright, some fading, but none alone, and in the quiet of that small home on the edge of forgotten paths, the story that began with purchase ended with presence, not as owners, not as weapons, but as family. And in the heart of the galaxy the gate waited, no longer angry, no longer hungry, held closed, not by code or lock, but by something stronger, by something no machine could build, by a simple, unbreakable choice.